Sweet. We're on.
All right. Well, welcome to Colin Hire versus Gavin Michaels. The Rollouts versus the Brave Birds. We have our second match, semifinals of NPA 3.
Yes.
This is Toller Webb. I'm joined by
Blake Hopper, also known as Bopper.
I apologize.
It's all good. It's all good.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
So we should be starting any time now. Looks like the two are just a click away from getting into team preview.
Seems to be fair. Let's set the stage here, though. We have two very esteemed Worlds competitors. In Gavin's case, multiple times World competitor. I think he went to his fourth, really recently.
I know for sure 3.
He went in 2011, right? Or would I be wrong?
I'm not sure actually. But okay. I know 2012 through 2014 he has been at Worlds, and Colin recently, for people who do not know, recently got top 4 at the 2014 World competition, only losing to Sajin Park, the eventual winner.
So actually his first championship too. First World championship, that is.
Yeah, first World's performance and appearance. So this is going to be a very great match. Two very, very well accomplished players. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is going to be a very, very, very good match. Hopefully.
We'll see when we get into it.
See.
But it looks like we've gotten into team preview here. We see Gavin on top, using a team of Mawile, Gardevoir, Staraptor, Garchomp, Hydreigon, and Talonflame. Mm-hmm. And then I think you know Colin's team, if I'm not mistaken, Blake. Which six?
Yes. He is using a team of Gengar, Zapdos, Hydreigon, Mawile, Conkeldurr, and Garchomp.
So something really similar to his Worlds team.
Yes, it still has that Hydreigon, Zapdos, Mawile core, and it still has that Conkeldurr as well, that he has proven that can work well. So he's just going back to what he knows works, something he's comfortable with.
I think it's interesting that he chose to change over to a Gengar there. It's perhaps a meta call.
Perhaps. And it actually looks like we are starting.
Yep, we're getting
going into game 1.
All right, yes, Gavin on top, Colin on bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go.
And Colin sends out Hydreigon and Gengar, as Gavin sends out Gardevoir and Staraptor. Staraptor going to get off that Intimidate. However, Gengar and Hydreigon are not really physical attackers, primarily special attackers, so that Intimidate's not going to be doing much.
Right, and what we also have to acknowledge here is that he led that Gengar. Staraptor's a primary threat is going to be Final Gambit. Something that can easily knock out a Pokemon in one hit. Gengar is immune to that. However, if it's a Scarf Staraptor that can outspeed that Gengar, it can hit with a Brave Bird, knock it out pretty quickly, and close combat is still threatening Hydreigon. If that's a Choice Scarf Gardevoir, we also have the issue of potentially getting Dazzling Gleamed right away. So Hydreigon probably seeing a big, potentially large threat here. Colin probably needs to look for a way to scout out what what items these two Pokemon are holding, what they're doing, before he can make any safe moves right away here.
Right. Yeah, Colin,
especially with such a potentially aggressive lead from Gavin, and we know him to be an aggressive player in the history.
Yes. Extremely aggressive.
Yeah. All right, so...
Yep, Staraptor going ahead with the U-turn on the Gengar, supposedly predicting the Protect on the Hydreigon. It's going to go... Staraptor's going to go back to Gavin, and now we get to wait for Gavin to make his decision. And it looks like he's going to go into his own Hydreigon, as Gengar Shadow Balls the Gardevoir for around 75 to 80%, and Gavin reveals that the Gardevoir is holding a Citrus Berry, bringing it to barely above half, And Hydreigon going for the double up on the Gardevoir, barely living with around 5 to 10%, and Gardevoir going for the Psychic on the Gengar. If he had a possible Focus Sash, he broke it with a U-turn, and the Psychic KOs the Gengar, giving Gavin a 4-3 lead.
That was a really smart opening play by Gavin. He saw through Colin's low-risk situation with Gengar and decided to go straight for the double up on Gengar, breaking the Focus Sash, knowing that Colin might think that that was a Choice Specs or Choice Scarf Gardevoir, probably predicting the Choice Specs based on his play, since Choice Scarf would have really gotten Hydreigon take a lot of damage.
Right.
And going for attacks on it with Shadow Ball and Dark Pulse. If he had known that was Citrus Berry, if he was calling Citrus Berry, that was definitely a high-risk play. He wasn't always going to get the KO. In this case, he definitely didn't get the KO. Gavin also protected himself against the potential Shadow Ball, even on the Staraptor slot, predicting something. Hydreigon was a safe switch-in, wasn't going to take a Will-O-Wisp and be affected by it. There was risk of Colin's Hydreigon going for Draco, but that was mitigated because it targeted Gardevoir.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and as we saw, Colin sent out Zapdos in replace of the fainted Gengar, and Gavin is going to go straight for the Ally Switch with his Gardevoir, switching places with his own Hydreigon, and he Dracos the Hydreigon spot, and that's not going to affect Gardevoir, as the Ally Switch made that spot a Gardevoir at that time for the rest of the turn, and Gavin goes for the Draco Meteor on the Zapdos, which takes it fairly well, bringing it down to about 10%, and Colin goes for the Thunderbolt onto the Hydreigon, which is about 20 to 25%.
Alright, yes. It does not do a whole lot to the Hydreigon here. I think Gavin was really smart to make the Ally Switch play. Colin obviously didn't know that it was around. So he avoided a lot of damage by calling Colin's misinformation or not understanding of what Gavin was using here, and protected both of his Pokemon. He knew the Thunderbolt was likely to hit the Gardevoir slot to save energy, basically, and still provide threat to the Hydreigon that was there. Now Colin has to play within his head what the risk is of going for Thunderbolt again, going for Draco again, because Draco could fail, and if he goes for Dark Pulse, he's not going to hurt the other Hydreigon. Gavin's got himself in a slot where he has two Pokemon in here that aren't going to take any damage from the attacks that would normally target the other. So the Ally Switch is a big risk situation, regardless for Colin.
Yeah, that Ally Switch is going to add a whole nother level of prediction for both players here. And it looks like Hydreigon is going to switch out into the Mawile for Gavin. I'm going to get off that Intimidate, and once again, both Colin's Pokemon are primarily special attackers, not going to do much benefit. And he goes straight for the Draco on the Hydreigon spot, which is now the Mawile. And since Mawile is part Fairy, it does not affect that. Zapdos goes for the Roost, gets above half, and Gardevoir goes for the Moonblast on the Hydreigon and KOs Colin's Hydreigon, bringing it to a 4-2 now. Colin not looking like he's in a great spot.
Yeah, this is going to be really tough for him. That Mawile that he has left isn't going to help much against Hydreigon, which can probably repeatedly retarget the Mawile with Fire Blast, where Mawile has to go for Play Rough, and Zapdos isn't going to get any KOs on Hydreigon anytime soon. That Mawile is still a big threat for Colin, because it can do a lot of damage to Zapdos, put it in range for things, and that Play Rough can probably almost KO at this range, if not actually KO.
Mm-hmm. Right, and Gavin is going to go ahead and Mega Evolve his Mawile as expected. Mawile very, very commonly Megas. And Colin is going to do the same. And we see Colin Zapdos going for the Thunderbolt onto the Gardevoir, getting the KO, which is a critical hit, although he was at low enough health to where it very, very likely did not matter. Gavin going for the Play Rough with his Mawile onto Zapdos, bringing it to 25 HP, and Colin going for the Play Rough on Gavin's Mawile, doing a little bit under half. And, very importantly, lowering his attack as well.
I think Colin was going for the attack drop there with Play Rough. It made no sense not to go for Iron Head there unless he was calling the Hydreigon switch in. Yes. It'd be very smart of him to do so. He needs that Mawile to be at -2 and force Gavin to make a more defensive play. The issue here is that the Staraptor that just came in for Gavin is going to still pose a huge threat to Mawile, potentially with Final Gambit, but instead it goes for Close Combat. Knocks out Zapdos. I'm probably a little heavy, but...
Staraptor does go for the Close Combat, knocks out the Zapdos, not very effective, going to lower Staraptor's defense and special defense. Zapdos is going to go down, and Mawile from Gavin is going to go for the Play Rough. It's going to miss, and Colin is going to go for the Iron Head on Mawile, bringing it down to around 5%. And it looks like this is going to be the closing turns for Gavin here. Don't see a way out of this for Colin. Staraptor is going to go for the close combat on Mawile, going to do around 40%. Again, lowering those defenses. However, at this point, Gavin has such a large lead, it very likely will not matter. And Gavin revealing the Rock Slide from his own Mawile and flinching Colin's Mawile.
All right, what's interesting about that situation, although Colin's pretty much already lost at this point, the only way that Colin won that match was, the Rock Slide misses and Play Rough goes down on Staraptor, getting the KO. But one of the only ways Colin won that match is Hydreigon missing Fire Blast. And now the situation is such that Hydreigon doesn't have to go for Fire Blast, since Mawile's at a high enough HP stat. Or a low enough HP stat, excuse me. So basically what Gavin did was put enough damage on Mawile with close combat to make it so that he could safely bring in Hydreigon and not worry about Fire Blast, which was really smart of him not to go straight for a Final Gambit or something like that, because he could run into a Protect and get Thunderbolted there. And instead just get the KO on Zapdos, which is for sure. Really well played by Gavin. He had that game pretty much locked down with the ally switch plays. Love seeing that.
Yeah, Gavin, known for using very solid teams with sometimes he brings out little tiny twists that completely flips a game. As we saw there, that ally switch really changed up the match. So Gavin takes game one for the Brave Birds. Very likely he's going to have a lot of momentum going into this second game. So Colin's going to have to adjust in some way to bring the set back.
All right, yeah, it was a really fast-paced game, which is kind of what Gavin's known for bringing to a battle.
Right.
Colin's more a control-style player. He likes to play a little bit defensively, make some calls, put himself in a situation where he wins the match, checkmating the opponent per se. Whereas Gavin's a little bit more of a gung-ho player. He likes to make very risky calls earlier on in the match. Or make risky plays, where that ally switch really fits into his style, because once it's known about, it puts a lot of 50-50s on the board, where attacks could or could not hit an ally switch. And I think it was really intelligent of him to bring it to this match, since Colin probably didn't see it coming. He didn't think of Gavin as the type of player who would bring it, but Gavin secured himself a very good position with it. It was really smart, almost counter-team to what Colin was going to bring.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, looks like they're in team preview for game two, or have been for about half a minute now. But yeah, Colin's going to have to adjust properly if he wants to get this set back on his side. He's already down.
What now? He really needs to catch up momentum-wise in this match. I think I mentioned that a lot with Caleb last time. The thing about these really aggressive teams, especially with Staraptor, is that they seek to get the momentum really early on, and Colin needs to find a way to control that.
Right. All right, it looks like they are starting the match right now. Colin's going to go ahead and send out Gengar and Mawile, changing it up a little bit. And Gavin is going to send out the Hydreigon and Garchomp. Both players changing up their leads just slightly. Or Gavin is completely different, but did not change much. And Colin just changed one Pokemon. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that Colin chose to bring Gengar again, since it so hideously failed last time. And I think it's interesting that he chose to bring the Mawile right away. He was obviously fearing that Hydreigon, but oh well.
Colin's got something up his sleeve. He's thinking. Mawile's going to go for the Protect, opting to not Mega Evolve, and Gavin's going to go for the Dragon Claw on the Garchomp and the Fire Blast on the Mawile, and Gengar shows the Trick Room. Definitely not something Gavin was likely seeing, or at least Colin assumes so. Definitely 100% completely flips around the momentum for Colin here.
Tables are very turned to this match.
Yes.
Very much have been turned to this match. Colin has effectively turned it on its head and forced Gavin into a defensive position. where he's posturing to defend himself now instead of the aggressive stance he was taking earlier on. Both these Pokemon that are in right now, even after the Gardevoir gets brought in, are really afraid of Mawile, and that Hydreigon is still afraid of it. So Gavin's got to find a way to catch back up after Colin's surprise Trick Room kind of caught him off guard.
Right, and it looks like Gavin is going to go for the switch in on the Gardevoir as Colin goes for the Play Rough on it. Likely going to pick up the KO, and yep, it goes down. Gardevoir is down a very large offensive force from Gavin's side in the last game, already gone out of the battle. And Gavin goes for the Earthquake from his Garchomp, going to do a little over half to the Mawile as Colin goes for the Will-O-Wisp on Garchomp, possibly burning a Lumberry. And no, Gavin does not have a Lumberry, no Life Orb. So yeah, Colin definitely put himself in a very great position for this game.
The thing about this is, though, is that Colin's Megas are pretty low HP, so if Gavin can find a way to gain control of the match once again, he's going to have a Mega and Colin's not going to. What Colin has to do is kind of protect that Mawile, so that he still is able to threaten the Hydreigon in some way and potentially still gain pressure on the opposing Mawile. It looks like his Mawile is a little slower, though. So he has a lot of momentum going to this turn, but there are some risks.
Right. Yep. All right. Colin is going to go ahead and opt for the switch out from Mawile to Zapdos, like you said, trying to preserve that Mawile for as long as possible. Gavin is going to go ahead and Mega Evolve his own Mawile, gaining the huge power ability. And Gengar is going to go for Protect on Colin's side, trying to take a more defensive, slower turn, approach to the turn, and Gavin's going to go for the Play Rough on the Zapdos. Very good play. Goes and it KOs with a crit. And Garchomp tries to go for the Rock Slide, and it goes into Gengar's Protect.
That's a tough turn for Colin. He's got 2 Pokemon in yellow HP and 1 Pokemon left. To Gavin's also 3. TR's about to run out. The other Mawile can still do a big chunk to Colin's. Even if without Iron Head, it would have a hard time KOing. It can probably get very close to it, if not doing it part of the time. That Gengar is not really having a lot of impact in TR. It can still Will-O-Wisp, but Colin's got to avoid getting hit by something first, because Gengar is pretty paper thin in this case.
Right. Yeah.
Colin's got to find a way to make sure he ensures his ability to knock out Hydreigon later on, and still maintain his own pressure.
Yeah, it looks like Colin is taking his time with his moves. And it looks like the turn is going to get going. Gavin goes for the Protect with his Garchomp, as Colin goes for the Play Rough into the Protect, and Gavin goes for the Play Rough on Mawile, and it lives with 8 HP, barely holding on, and Colin manages to burn the Mawile, which is putting Colin in a little bit of a better position.
Yeah, Colin's a little bit better here, but the issue is that Mawile is still in range of a Sucker Punch.
Right. It's
also in range of Rough Skin. 2 very big problems. It needs to be there to deal with that Garchomp, and it's going to faint to something pretty soon here. Instead, choosing not to get hit by the Rough Skin, he could go for Iron Head on Mawile.
Right. And it looks like he did opt for that, and Gavin not deciding to go for the Sucker Punch as Gengar protects. So Gengar's not going to take any damage this turn, as Colin does 75% to Mawile with Iron Head, and his own Mawile gets KO'd from Gavin's Rock Slide from Mawile, and Garchomp just attacks into the Protect.
Yep, and the Twisted Dimensions returning to normal. Very important there.
Yes.
Colin going into his own Garchomp, which is actually probably the best thing that could happen here.
Right. Sure.
Colin's still got he has the faster option against Hydreigon. He can still do damage to it, and right now he has Earthquake, and that'll do a good number on Garchomp, and also get rid of that Mawile, or force it to switch into Hydreigon, and Mawile will still faint from a burn the next turn it's in. Mm-hmm. Gavin's pretty safe with that.
Right. Colin going for the Earthquake, gonna KO the Mawile and bring Garchomp down to red, as Gavin's Garchomp actually outspeeding the Gengar. Or I apologize for that. I missed the
Gengar
first
protected
part.
and failed. Yes.
Okay, my apologies for that. Yes, so Garchomp is going to faint from the burn after the Earthquake damage. So now it is 2-1 against Gavin's Hydreigon.
Right. This looks like it's exactly what Colin wanted to happen here. That Life Orb Garchomp can get the KO. Or I think it's Life Orb. No, sorry, regular not Life Orb Garchomp can get the KO with a Shadow Ball. on Hydreigon, and Hydreigon showed itself to be slower than Gavin's Garchomp, which was not Scarfed. So we're pretty sure that Colin has it locked up here.
Yep, and Colin just goes for the Shadow Ball Dragon Claw double up onto the Hydreigon and gets the KO and steals game 2.
Right, there we go. Colin looked like he had that pretty locked up since the first turn Trick Room. I think both matches have kind of been taken control of viciously with an iron hand from the players. Gavin showing his hand with an ally switch, and Colin returning the favor with his own Trick Room from Gengar. Probably the last thing we expected, unless we were watching the senior finals this year. Probably the most notable instance of Trick Room Gengar use. But coming from Colin, it's definitely a surprise, especially since these players know each other pretty well. Gavin should have had probably a low expectation of that being a Trick Room Gengar. The thing about Colin, though, is that he likes to find a way to incorporate Trick Room onto his teams. It's not really expected, and in this case, it definitely was not expected. Yeah,
it definitely threw Gavin off, and it gave Colin enough momentum to take the game and tie up the set.
Absolutely.
And they are going back into team preview, as they have twice already, as I have stated. For game 3, this is the tie-break game. This is going to decide the set for the Brave Birds versus Rollouts. Not for the entire series, just this game, though.
Right, the important game. Yeah, the important thing to remember here, all of these games count the same, right? 4 wins are 4 wins. It doesn't matter who gets them. So every win counts. We've seen that the Rollouts have already taken 1 loss. Mr. Bopper lost to Ibiki in a 1-2. I'm sorry. It happens. It happens to all of us.
That was good.
Putting the Rollouts at an 0-1 deficit right here, they need to keep team morale up. So it really matters that they try to get this win right here, especially with Colin being a powerhouse player. Getting 3rd in the world. He may not have a positive record this season, but it's been pretty shown that he's a very strong player in 2014. So the hope is that he does get this win, despite Gavin also being a very strong player in general.
Yeah, both the Rollouts and Bravebirds have 2 very, very strong players, if not the best players on their teams, playing this match right now. So definitely a very important match for both teams to win.
It's kind of interesting in 2014 that the players that might be considered some of the most successful, accomplished players are sitting here playing one of the most aggressive matches we've seen all season.
Right, yeah. Actually, we're going to go ahead and start the match right now. It looks like Gavin leads Double Bird with Staraptor and Talonflame. Talonflame is Pokemon we have not seen this set, and Colin is leading Zapdos and Gengar. Yeah. Definitely.
So the big threat here is that Colin, not necessarily calling a Double Bird, but fearing a bird of some kind, did lead his own bird. His bird is an electric bird, and electric birds shock regular birds, and regular birds do not like electric birds. Right. The point being that Zapdos is a big threat to Staraptor and Talonflame, and Thunderbolt will get a KO on either one of them. The thing about Zapdos is that it's also usually bulky enough to survive a final Gambit. So if Gavin wants to get rid of it right away, he's got to invest both Pokemon into knocking it out. He can't just Final Gambit it and get it out of the way like Staraptor likes to do with things it doesn't like. The Gengar's a little bit odd here. It doesn't really have a whole lot to do. It would faint from a Berry Bird, but it's probably Focus Sashed. It would also need to Gavin's Pokemon to double up into it to get the KO. I think that was a little bit of an interesting pressure by Colin that he forced the double target on either of his Pokemon.
Yes, by forcing the double target, he makes it to where one of his Pokemon is guaranteed to live this turn. And Gavin is actually going to protect his own Talonflame and U-turn on the Gengar, breaking a possible Focus Sash, which Gengars like to hold. Something we commonly see Gengars holding, so that was a good play on Gavin's part already. And he is going to go into his Hydreigon as Colin Shadow Balls into the Protect and Thunderbolts the Hydreigon switch in.
Right. Sorry. I got lost for a second there.
All good.
Right, Hydreigon does take that Thunderbolt pretty well. Gengar Shadow Ball hit the Talonflame, right? Talonflame Protect?
Yes.
All right, so position reversal here. Zapdos is actually really scared of Draco Meteor. And Gengar doesn't really have a whole lot to do here. It would faint from a Brave Bird.
Yeah.
All right.
Gavin is going to go for the overheat onto the Zapdos, doing about 40%. And actually, he reveals the Life Orb, as Colin goes for the Shadow Ball onto the Talonflame, barely living with around 25%, lowering special defense. However, it's low enough to where it very likely will not matter. And Gavin misses the Draco Meteor, which is huge. That's going to allow Zapdos to get off the Thunder Wave onto Hydreigon, practically crippling it for the rest of the battle.
Right, that's a big deal. That's also putting in speed range of Mawile, which Colin almost definitely has. Right. It's also not providing as much of a threat to Zapdos anymore. Talonflame has used the overheat. It's been burned, per se. So the bravest of birds is now a little bit less of a brave bird. It's less on fire, so it can't do as much damage with overheat if it decides to use it again.
Right. Yes. Looks like Gavin is going to go for the Protect with his Talonflame and not protect the Hydreigon, as Colin goes for the Roost with Zapdos and the Shadow Ball into Zapdos' Protect. As the
into
Hydreigon,
yes.
Into Talonflame's Protect. I apologize for that.
No problem.
As Gavin goes for the Draco Meteor on the Gengar, gonna KO because if it had a Focus Sash, the Staraptor U-turned out and broke that possible Focus Sash, so Gengar is now down for a 4-3 lead in Gavin's favor.
Alright, Garchomp coming in puts Colin in a really good spot here. He has a pretty safe Dragon Claw on Hydreigon, outside of a Staraptor or Mawile switch-in, and Thunderbolt is almost guaranteed on Talonflame. That Talonflame may be a Will-O-Wisp variant, but it's more likely a Taunt variant, as we've seen a lot more of the Life Orb Overheat variants be. So Colin shouldn't be seeing much threat here, and he's got a really strong offensive presence on the field.
Right. Yeah, it looks like Gavin is actually going to switch out the Hydreigon into Mawile. Gonna get off the Intimidate, going to definitely prevent that Garchomp from doing as much damage as it would probably like to, as Talonflame goes for the Brave Bird on what I can assume to be Garchomp. Yes, as Talonflame goes for the Brave Bird on Garchomp and is going to bring to 15 HP due to a critical hit. It's going to take Rough Skin damage and Brave Bird recoil damage, and it's going to KO the Talonflame. As Colin goes for the Dragon Claw, not going to affect Part Fairy Mawile, and Thunderbolt's going to do about 60% to no Mega Mawile.
I would say that's kind of an unnecessarily safe play there from Colin. He should have seen that Mawile switch in coming. The Hydreigon's still a pretty big threat despite being paralyzed. Dragon Claw can no longer knock it out, so Colin's going to need to either switch or double target. The nice thing here is that since Hydreigon can't outspeed Zapdos, Zapdos can still knock out Mawile before it moves. But It's still a huge risk situation for Colin here. He probably should have gone for some sort of low-risk play with Garchomp instead of going straight for the Dragon Claw. Of course, getting crit by Brave Bird has its downsides.
Yes, that crit is going to allow Gavin to potentially KO the Garchomp with a Sucker Punch, whereas if it did not, it may not have been able to KO. And as I just mentioned, Gavin is going to go for the Sucker Punch on Garchomp. Going to knock it out, however, it is going to take Rough Skin damage, potentially knocking it into Thunderbolt range from the Zapdos. And as we see, Colin goes for the Zapdos onto the Mawile, which will pick up the KO. And Gavin has lost his Mega, as Gavin goes for the Dark Pulse onto the Zap, going to do about barely over half.
Alright, so the thing with this here, as Raptor is brought in for Gavin and Mawile is brought in for Colin, Colin has a pretty great situation here, actually, because that Draco Meteor missed. Hydreigon is paralyzed. Hydreigon is slower than Mawile, and Hydreigon is more than likely locked into Dark Pulse. So, Mawile's pretty safe here. If it's not locked in, it's okay. In that case, he wouldn't be able to knock out Mawile in one hit. What Colin has to avoid doing is losing his Mawile to a final Gambit right here, and playing Zapdos safely enough to keep it relevant.
Right. Yep. Hopefully Colin decides to do that as he goes for the Mega Evolution on the Mawile, as we have seen all three games. And Colin is going to offer the Sucker Punch onto the Staraptor, going to do about barely under half damage, as Gavin goes for the final Gambit onto the Mawile, knocking it down to 25 to 30% health, which will KO Gavin's own Staraptor. One of the downsides to Final Gambit is you do KO yourself, as Colin goes for the Thunderbolts on Hydreigon, knocking it down to half health as Gavin gets fully paralyzed with Hydreigon, looking like Colin's locked up this game.
Yeah, that paralyze was the last nail in the coffin there. Colin was banking on getting a para anyways. Mawile got knocked out by Dark Pulse right there, but it looks like the para just sealed up the game for Colin, giving him the opportunity to win the game pretty evenly, pretty convincingly, 2-0 thanks to a little bit of luck and a lot of really well-played Pokemon. It's very, very quick in terms of these matches go, and I think it just speaks to the skill of the players. They could play against each other so quickly, back and forth. Decisions were made quickly, and they were both looking to win a game with maximum efficiency.
Right.
Colin came out on top this time, but based on the volatility of the play and the match structure, it could probably go either way. Played in an infinite number of games, it would probably end up 50-50.
Yes. Both players both took a game, showed why they were very accomplished players. Both players ended up making very good plays, gave it some very good matches. And Colin is going to win 2-1 against Gavin, giving the Goldenrod Rollouts a win. And so, tying up this set 1-1.
Up to 1-1, these semifinals are going to be big nerves for all these players. They all want to win it for their team, and coming into the finals of NPA would just be it's a big mark on your resume to say that you've won or even just gotten to the finals of NPA. Sadly, people don't really notice top fours, so here's hoping the Rollouts can achieve something so quickly after their devastatingly terrible season last year.
Yes,
with one
with the new management of Benji. Yes.
What's nice, the Brave Birds have actually been pretty consistently okay, at least. So this is nice to see them getting into these semifinals right now.
With a bye as well.
With a bye as well. They've done really well this season. It's been really impressive to watch them go. And here's hoping to both teams that they get whatever luck they deserve and win the matches that they deserve to win. All I have to say is that they hopefully will both play their best and have no regrets.
Yep. All right, I believe we should go ahead and sign off then.
Yep.
Thank you everybody for watching.
This has been Toller Webb.
And this has been Blake Bopper.
And thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you for watching.